Yep, my name is John Ward and I'm the Chief Executive at Livingston Football Club. I got involved in the club 2015. Previous to that, we've had a long association through my business with them. We were sponsors to Livingston for when they first went into when they went into administration back in 2009, 2010. I was running a business locally, and I noticed that they had started the season with no shirt sponsors. They basically, that'd been the second time the club had went bust, and they really struggled to get any credibility with the business community. So we sponsored them for, I had a business at the time called Fastec. We sponsored them for 3 years, and that's when I first got involved with the club. I sold the business and I went to work in London for a couple of years, and then when I came back up in 2015, the club had again found themselves without a sponsor. The directors at that time were taking each other to court over unpaid bills and loans and all that stuff, and the sponsor pulled out basically because they were getting bad PR from it. So I got involved through a wee brewery that my son ran through in Edinburgh, and a business called Crafty Brew, and we ran the club. We sponsored the club shirts for a season, and then by that time I realised the club was being run by a committee and not being run by the guys who actually owned it. And the committee, fairly friendly with them coming along to games and stuff. So the committee asked me at one point. I think I'd made a remark about every time I come into the stadium there was sheriff's officers or there was somebody chasing money, and I said, well, who looks after this stuff? And they said, well, we don't really have anybody does it. And it turned out they didn't have proper accounting software, or they weren't using it properly, and it was essentially a collection of fans that were in the business and volunteering. So I got involved in 2015 just as the club got relegated. That was the season we got put into Division 1, and we made a decision as a committee. We were run as a committee at that point. We made a decision that we were going to stay full time and really work to try and get the club back into the Championship, because the difference in money was just astounding, really, and the club should really have gone part time at that point. So we undertook to put some money into the club and make sure that happened. We did that, and the club got promotion. And during that year, I'd started digging into finances and loans and the structure of the club, and it became apparent that the guys that still owned the club had no intention of funding any losses or whatever. So we engineered a buyout of their shares, and we made shares available to fans and available to the community and stuff. And essentially, we've enjoyed success since then. So we've taken the debt down on the business. We've formed a proper board around it, and we've obviously had the getting promoted into the Championship the season before last, and then obviously getting promoted via the playoffs, which absolutely no one was expecting, and including me. Even 10 minutes to go in the second leg of the Partick Thistle game, I was still, something will happen here, and it's so we had no preparation for it. We had no plans for being in the Premiership. So essentially, the whole of the summer it was all hands on deck. The stands that you see here, the north and the south stands, they effectively were completely derelict inside. They had the toilets had all, over the years the ceiling had flooded. Club had no money to fix things. So essentially we had to spend money getting the whole of the thing revamped so that it was open, so that we could get Celtic and Rangers fans in when they sold it out. Had to do this in both stands. Our floodlight needed sorted. We had to put seats in that over the years, hadn't been replaced, because essentially, other than 2 or 3 big games last season, the whole of the home and away fans were in this stand here. So we've maintained this stand and managed. So the benefit of being into the Premiership has allowed us to invest some money into the club, invest some money into the infrastructure, and do some of this, make some of the repairs that we should have been doing, as the club should have been doing over the 20 years that they've owned the stadium. It was owned by a company called Livingston 5, and again that was Gordon McDougall, Jed Nixon and Neil Rankin. To be fair, they had bought the club thinking, they bought the club for the administrators thinking that they were going to be allowed to remain in Division 1. And when they were, when the SFA or the SPL or whoever, I wasn't involved at the time, but when they put them down to Division 3, that effectively knocked the legs from them, because they still had players on contract at Division 1 wages. They were going down to Division 3, where it was the prize money is in the single thousands as opposed to tens of thousands that you would be expecting in the Championship. So they were up against it for the start, to be honest. It was a very welcome surprise. It was an absolutely amazing experience. Again, the way the playoffs are structured, it's very heavily favoured for the team that's coming from the Premier League. So again, the teams we'd Dundee United to play home and away, then we'd Partick Thistle to play home and away because we finished quite well, and again we hadn't really expected to. Dundee United had a game to play before they played us, so we'd Dundee United two games to play, and then we obviously played Partick Thistle, who should have been fresher. Obviously should have on paper had better quality players, had more expensive players. So we really didn't expect it to happen. In terms of being prepared, yeah, we could have done all sorts of things had we known. One of the biggest issues we had was ticketing. There's rules and. There's rules around ticketing where on category on games against Celtic, Rangers, etc. fans can't rock up and pay to get in. So we had no infrastructure to support that. So again, we had to get Ticketmaster involved, and that took weeks to get accounts set up, etc. We're still trying to roll out the next phase of that, which is fully electronic ticketing that fans can buy online. But we're working on it just now. It's quite staggering, to be honest. I think the 3 seasons I've been here so far, in the first season we turned over approximately £800,000, and I think from football there would probably be around 100 grand. I mean, that is public. It's publicly available what the prize money and the finishing positions are. In the championship, because we ended up in the playoffs, we done very well out of that. But the actual money from the SPFL, again, it's public record, but it wasn't an awful lot of money. We were probably up at 1.2 million turnover. This season we're expecting, I think even if we finished bottom of the league and we're relegated, I think you're in excess of £1 million coming as prize money, and then obviously what you get for cups, you obviously get the benefit of hosting sellout games to guys like Rangers, Celtic, Aberdeen, Hearts, Hibs, etc. So the difference again in that is staggering in terms of turnover. We would have, in an average game last season, we may take £2,000-3,000 at the gate, over and above our season ticket, between away fans and people rocking up to watch the game. In this season, if we sell out against Rangers or Celtic, you're looking at close to £180,000 income from ticket sales for that match. So the difference is staggering, really. We've been very lucky at Livingston. We only have in the region of, last season I think it was 700 or 800. This season we have 1,100 season ticket holders. Some of those are kids. So we don't enjoy a huge home support. What we do have, and we've been very lucky with, is corporate sponsorship. So we have managed to get the business community involved in the club. We've managed to, when I first come in here, if you look at the park, the signs were faded and done, and it was some of the sponsors even were companies that had went bust 5, 6, 7 years ago, but it was too expensive to take their boards down and do anything about it. We didn't have anybody actively pursuing the business community to get involved in sponsorship. As you can see now, there's not a bit of the park that's not got sponsorship, that we don't have boards up on, we have the stands supported. We have a local sponsor, Nordan, who again have used their own staff to come in. This stand here was sponsored originally by Motorola, so it stayed Motorola up until last year. And Nordan, we were sitting at a game one day, and Nordan says, the guy who runs Nordan says, the lady that runs Nordan, she said, I reckon we could move the chairs about and put some more in, and we'd be able to make Nordan out of the Motorola, logo. So they've done it there and they've done it here. And again, it just lifts the look of the place. It makes the place look, it makes the stadium look invested in. It makes the stadium look cared for, and it's we're very pleased with how it's developed this season and last. The pitch cost close to £400,000 to put down. That was funded in part. We have a West Lothian Youth Foundation that are basically going to be responsible for the hire of the pitch to the community, and they achieved grants for that. The club contributed some of the money, but the purpose of that is really that we can sustain the stadium going forward and make it a viable business going forward, so that we are having the community, we are having the stadiums being used. I mean, it's an asset. It's in the centre of the community. In terms of benefit to the club, what it does for us is there's a benefit that the players are training on the surface, so there's a perceived advantage there. Financially, in terms of benefit to the club, we are not having to hire areas to train. So, for instance, last winter time we couldn't train on the back pitches. So there's some fairly poor quality training facilities over the back there that the club used to own. They're now owned by the council. So that was costing us in the region of £15,000 a year to hire those. They would often get flooded when the weather was particularly bad. So last winter we were also paying somewhere in the region of £500 a day to be training at the Oriam. So the impact was fairly severe in terms of cash outlay. The actual carpet needs to be replaced, I think, every 7 years. So part of the contingency fund and part of the budgeting for the West Lothian Youth Foundation and ourselves has been making sure that we're covering that and putting money away to ensure that we're able to replace it, and as time goes on. I mean, there's 3 clubs, including another Premiership team who Fish Pitchstone by the same company. So ourselves, Raith Rovers and Hamilton all put the same surface down by the same company. I think ours was the last one to be finished, and I think because we put black pellets down, or the company put black pellets down, they overdid it on that, I think. And so for the first couple of games, you could see the spray of them coming up. Players didn't think it affected how the park played, didn't affect how the ball moved or anything, but I think the perception was you could clearly see on TV, and you could clearly see in some of the photography that these things were bouncing up. It's since been scrimmed and they've taken it down a level, and from your point of view, we train on it every day. There's a criticism that it causes long-term damage to players, or it causes damage because they can't twist or move, but most of the big clubs are training on 3 and 4G pitches, so I would. We certainly aren't carrying a lot of increased injuries or whatever over last year when we had grass. And the thing that it does here for us is it protects last year we had 2 games that were cancelled, 2 fairly high revenue games that were cancelled because of weather. And the difference between having a Dunfermline here on a Saturday with 4,000 or 5,000 fans and having Dunfermline here on a Tuesday night with 300 or 400 fans has a massive impact for Livingston. So this protects us going forward. Yeah, I think it was the Tony Macaroni Arena when I first got involved in it. I think having subsequently met with the guy that runs Tony Macaroni, we actually had a meeting. We had a meeting about a month before the playoffs, and we agreed a deal going forward into going into the next 3 seasons, and that was for naming rights and for shirt sponsorship. And I took the view that even if we were promoted, which we didn't genuinely expect, as I've said already, but even if we were promoted, we wouldn't go seeking more money from them, because in fairness to them, the season that we were relegated, they didn't come back and try to renegotiate the deal. So I felt we had to show the same integrity that they did, and that's been, I think that's been something that we've benefited from. I've gone on to develop a friendship with Sepp, who is the guy at the head of Tony Macaroni, to the point where I was able to pick up the phone to him at the start of the season when there was some big offers coming in for shirt sponsorship, and able to have the conversation saying, look, how important is the shirts to you versus being the Tony Macaroni Arena? And he took the view that he wanted both, and we'd already shaken hands on it, so we agreed and went forward. But that's the level of relationship that we've now developed. But yeah, it's been good for the club. Yeah, we've got a couple of things on the go. So one of the big things that I certainly remember growing up in West Lothian was my sons coming home from school with tickets for games and the ability to come to games free if there was an adult, etc. We've tried to bring that back, but of course the world's a different place than it was 10-15 years ago, and in terms of child protection and disclosure and all of these things, so we can't just rock up with players at schools and without there being an element of planning, etc. We've been very fortunate that one of our fans is he's a PE teacher at one of the primary schools, and he has kind of formed a committee of PE teachers and has taken it upon himself to take that initiative forward. So what we have done is we've got a local company in MTZ and my own company Spring. We have sponsored 50 season tickets for schools. So what we'll do is we'll create a section in the main stand and that will be, we'll hand out season ticket to schools. We're starting that from the beginning of December, the Motherwell game. So to the Old Firm, I think the Old Firm are good for Scottish football. I mean, I think the clubs have just announced a deal with Sky Sports that's increasing revenue by somewhere in the region of 19-20% between Sky Premier and BBC, and a lot of that is going to be around people's desire, away fans particularly home fans who can't get to away games because of the capacity and whatever else, is that they will want to be watching the teams live on TV. The downside is obviously we're Livingston. We should be able to the size of the size of the town, the size of West Lothian as a region, we should be able to command a decent home support. But we have lots of fans who are Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Hibs supporters. It's just part of the divide in Scotland, and I think that sectarian thing's always going to be part of a life in Central Scotland. So we have to take the good with the bad in that. Well, we have two games against Rangers and a game against Celtic. So I would guess in terms of away fans, we'll be looking at somewhere in the region of 430 to 450,000 pounds of revenue. The benefit obviously for the town is also pretty good. We have taxi guys, we have pubs, we have shops, and they're all telling us that they really benefit when the bigger clubs come to town with the sheer volume of people. There's negatives around that. There's always lots of mess. We have to pay contractors to come in and clean up car parks and clean up the stadium afterwards. But in general, it's a very positive thing. I think we also benefited with Rangers going down to the bottom league, because I think most small teams in Scotland benefited with Rangers coming up, because they always took fairly large numbers of fans with them, and we certainly enjoyed a significant income through Rangers being here in the season that they were in the Championship. This season was obviously my first season in the SPFL as a Premier League. Well, in actual fact, I didn't have a title last year. We felt we had to. I do this kind of in spare time, as do the rest of the guys. But we felt we had to become more professional, and we had to start thinking about being more structured. So I took on the role of CEO, and I've been to all of the meetings so far this season, and they were very focused on the TV deal. They had a very, very clear and defined process for going out to attract companies, because again, I think they felt that whilst Sky and BT kind of reached the maximum that they were willing to, because they had lots of subscribers, etc., there was new players coming into the market such as Amazon, Facebook, and some of the sort of streaming companies. So they were very, very proactive and very professional, in my opinion, how they went out to do it. They engaged a guy who had been on the other side of the fence, and he negotiated on behalf of Sky or BT, a guy called Phil Lines. So when we went on Monday for the meeting, the meeting just where they announced the deal on Monday, they basically had they laid out very clearly who they'd spoken to, what the first round of bids had come in with, what the criteria had been set at. And to be honest, the Sky deal the Sky deal made sense, the BBC deal made sense, and the Premier Sports deal made sense, and it give the league a rise of somewhere in the region of 19% based on previous revenues. And I think there's a perception in Scottish football that because the English League gets billions, and because the English Football League was up at 500-600 million, that Scotland must be worth 80, 90. The guy who led the bid was very clear, as was Neil Doncaster, as was Murdoch McLennan, who's the chairman of the SPFL. He's got a background in media, and they were very clear that this whole thing was going back the way that BT had lost rights for UFC, they hadn't bid for certain things. And he had a relationship with Sky, I think, and I think that's what got it over the line and the increased revenue, I think. But they were very nervous about making sure that the clubs didn't take a lot of time to agree this. And in actual fact, there was talk of the clubs taking this week to make the decision and getting back to the SPFL board by the end of the week. But I think certainly Brian Ewan, our club secretary, and a couple other guys in the room, particularly from Celtic and Rangers, they took the view that this was going to leak, the news would get out there, and it could potentially damage any offers. It could potentially it could disrupt the process. and they felt, I think we all felt, or most of the people in the room felt it was a good deal. So it ended up with 10 of the clubs, they needed 8 to get it through, and 10 of the clubs voted on the day, and another 2 of the clubs said that they had to take it back to board, but they would be back and respond within within a matter of hours. So I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm fairly certain there was a unanimous agreement between all of the clubs that this was a good deal and that we should be taking it and moving forward with it. I've found Neil Doncaster to be very supportive, very helpful. One of I talked about us, going up through the playoffs, and we were at Firhill, and on that day, Neil Doncaster and Ian Blair were sitting 2 rows behind me. And they'd wished us well at the start of the game. The first thing that went through my mind, obviously, when we were promoted, was there had been talk about the Premier League not allowing artificial pitches. So I literally had people, want to shake my hand and patting us in the back, etc. And I made my way up to Neil Doncaster and asked the question specifically. Neil, we've got a problem now with putting this pitch down, and he was, he was very gracious, and he said, no, it's not. At the moment, it's not something it's been talked about, it's been discussed, but at the moment you're absolutely safe going forward with it. So I found it to be fair and reasonable. Gary had been in our plans initially. So the process was kind of looked after by our assistant manager Dave Martindale and his backroom team, and we were very, very clear that we wanted to keep that team that had got us promotion 2 years in a row. We wanted to keep them intact. So right from day one, when we were initially looking for a manager, when David Hopkins was handed in his notice, we were very clear that we were going to look for someone to steer the ship that was already there. We would not be good, and we had some very attractive people come in. Henrik Larsson made approaches, he wanted to bring a couple of people in, but that would not have fitted the model. It certainly wouldn't have fitted the budget, and again, remember, this is back in May. We've no idea what our turnover is going to be this season. We've no idea what what prize money is going to look like, and what away gates are going to be, and we're essentially making it up as we went along. So we were very, very careful with money, and Kenny looked like a really good. He was very keen. He spoke very well, and again, I think David felt that with Kenny on the pitch, it would give us, it would enhance the team, and we thought that. So when we actually come to when we had the discussion and the agreement about him taking over full-time manager's duties, to be honest, it was we disagreed on that, and I think Kenny thought when he still had a full year of football left in him, and he wanted to have a go at that. So we kind of agreed to go our separate ways on it, and Gary was always in the background, and we'd explained all this to Gary when we first appointed Kenny. Gary's an ambitious guy, and to be honest, it didn't surprise any of us, the results that we had. I think the most disappointing, the thing that sticks out for me this season so far is that we absolutely squandered 6 points against St Johnstone and Hamilton. St Johnstone had 1 chance and Hamilton had 1 chance in the whole game. We pounded Hamilton in that game, but it's the same 3 points you get for beating them as you get for beating Rangers. So it doesn't make any sense to we need to win the games that are important to us, or against the guys that are at our level. I think I would be more than happy with us being just retaining our status in the Premiership. I think that we've already seen with the increased turnover, the increased interest in the club, that if we can sustain this, we can do something good here. We can, the vision here was that we would have a community stadium. We would get more and more people in Livingston involved. We'd get more and more people interested, and we've seen that. We're seeing more and more kids coming. So it would be a great legacy. It would just be great for the town if we could get a lot more children along to the games and sustain the kind of level and the performance that we're doing just now by remaining in the Premiership.